So this week we watched quite possibly the greatest film ever made. That's right. We watched Morbius again.
God.
Second time through, gotta say, I got it wrong the first time, man. We're all morbed up. We're fully torqued for morb. We got the blood pumping in all the right places, baby. Wait, what'd you think of your second viewing of Morbius, Scott?
I feel great. I know I gave it a half star last week. I'm
Mhm.
bumping it up to 4 right now. I really saw the nuances in Leto's performance, especially going from really channeling like Tom Hanks from Philadelphia, essentially. And I really started to see the drama that was kind of coming through. And it's quite possibly it's a beautiful movie, first off, and then
Mhm.
the violence between two men growling at each other again is just riveting.
Yeah, when Matt Smith, I finally got it now. When Matt Smith danced while putting on New Balances to a song that just the chorus was "sex" every like 12 seconds. I finally got the vision that was there by whoever the fuck those guys were that wrote Gods of Egypt, who are clearly masterminds of cinema.
I
You guys
bought
are
four
making me want to
pairs.
see. You guys are making me want to see Morbius.
Oh, you should honestly see Morbius.
You should see it so you could suffer along with us at this point, because I mean, suffer for the art, truly. It's a
Morbius.
beautiful.
I did fall into the product placement of Morbius and bought a G-Shock because of how many times Jared Leto went, I have to set the bat time. This is how much time it takes for me to run out of blood.
Do you guys buy Jared Leto as now? Obviously, he was good in Dallas Buyers Club, but there's just something about like some of his roles that I'm like, I don't know what he's going for here, man. Like, I don't know. Do you guys buy him in a lot of stuff as far as like a
No.
leading?
I buy him in nothing. I didn't even, I really don't even, I think he was the worst part of Dallas Buyers Club, to be honest. I didn't even really buy that role. And I think now, not to get onto my dumb little pedestal, I also think that if we were to reevaluate that now, a lot of people would probably be like, well, why didn't that go? I mean, even then people were like, well, why wasn't that a trans actress?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
And then now I think if that movie were to come out, it wouldn't have just been a couple like one or two Slate articles. It would be like, you might as well have casted fucking Scarlett Johansson. Like you just keep taking jobs from people.
Emma, who is it? Emma, what's her fuck that was in that movie where she's in Hawaii and she's supposed to be a half Asian woman?
Are you thinking of the wrong Missy
wrong
with
Missy.
David Spade?
Oh yeah, clearly. Yeah, we're big David Spade fans over on this
Real
show.
Spade heads.
That's
a slur. No, I gotta take that
yo,
back. That sounds like a slur.
Yeah, I'm not.
He's thinking of the Adam Sandler movie Jack and Jill.
I'm just really
friend of the show, Dan. When that came out, they were convinced for some reason that Jack and Jill cost over $1 million, over $1 billion. I'm sorry, to make. But then we looked it up, and Jack and Jill is like a surprisingly, like it had a surprisingly high budget. Hold on, I gotta. The budget of that film was 79 million.
no fuck no. Hang on.
So it's
79 million. Holy shit.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not $1 billion, but like it is like that's a lot of money for a movie where the lead's the same guy who produced the movie.
I mean, you had to pay for Al Pacino though. That's the problem.
Well, that was like the beginning, or not the beginning, but maybe like the most glaring example of like Adam Sandler starting to make movies that are just like him getting like Universal to pay for him to go on vacation. Like if you look, like all the movies for his last 10 years are like with him and all his friends, and they're all set at like resorts in Hawaii or like at like a beach. Like,
oh well, 51st Dates was in Hawaii. He's like, yeah, we should probably shoot here for like a month and a half. Make sure we get everything we need.
Could you imagine like the budget for that movie being 79 million? And like the budget for the Northman, I think, was like 70 to 90, like they said.
Yeah.
I was like, holy fuck, dude.
Yeah, and they completely like recreated like historically accurate Viking settlements. and
Yeah.
instead of like putting like a big fake fat ass on Adam Sandler.
I think it's fair to say that The Northman is the Jack and Jill of modern cinema right now, for sure.
Yeah.
Which is a
I would
perfect
agree.
movie with a great budget.
I would agree with
Well,
that.
right, just as Jack and Jill was a sort of take off of the classic piece of like literature fairy tale, and so was The Northman, a new and revolutionary take on the saga of Amleth, which of course inspired Hamlet.
Just want an omelet now. Fuck. Yeah, I do love that Jack and Jill is clearly, you know, a Roman tragedy that Adam Sandler really brought into turn to a comedy, which really shows your skill. Um, but Travis, since you're here, and I really don't want to talk about Jack and Jill anymore, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, since you are filling in as a guest, most importantly, but also filling in for Jenna once again, who is human resourcing it up still currently at 5:18 in the PM.
Yeah, so I am Travis Ybarra, aka Captain Creature. Over on, we have a podcast called Horror-fying My Friends with a Y. I do with producer Kate, the theme queen herself. And what I do basically is every week we have a guest on, Robert Hodge, as you know, a bunch of my friends who don't normally dig horror, and I'll have them on, and we'll talk about something horror or horror adjacent. I've been kind of breaking the rules a little bit, and having people on for like Lost Highway and stuff that is arguably not a horror film, but yeah, we got some cool stuff coming up. Eaten Alive's coming up. Evil Dead's coming up. But I've always loved introducing friends to fucked up stuff. Like, and I think that we all like that kind of feeling where you can just like see someone's face as they're watching like a Blue Velvet or like something like that, and it's just like I love that fucking experience, and that's kind of what I get sitting in this chair and introducing producer Kate to something.
Yeah, I think that's what I get doing this to Jenna, but it's not to open her eyes. It is truly to just try to scar her, because everybody that I've tried to make watch horror movies are basically just like, I'm not fucking doing this with you anymore. I can't fucking stand this.
Yeah.
I have subjected a couple people to Cannibal Holocaust as of late, and they're
Legit.
not talking to me right now. So
I'm
Legit,
glad. I'm glad
Mike-
I'm not the only one who comes when he makes people get freaked out, which is apparently something that we all do.
Cannibal Holocaust legit might be one of my top 10 favorite horror films of all time. I fucking
Really?
love that movie, man.
I had such a soft spot for it now, and I'm just so fucking, I don't know, numb to everything. I watched that movie and I'm like, God, the fucking soundtrack is so like relaxing though.
I can't come anymore.
It's like the
But yeah,
fucking
man,
Cannibal Ferox soundtrack. That's like the funkiest soundtrack to a horror movie ever made. You're just like, oh, I'm gonna jag like 4 times during this. This is awesome.
But yeah, thanks you guys for having me on to talk about. Like I said, we've been getting into more like non-genre stuff lately. So I was like, oh, The Northman. I definitely want to fucking see that. So it's a cool opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fair to say that Steve and I are pretty much Eggers fanboys, I think, at this point. I mean, 3 for 3 for sure, which we'll get into. But yeah, this movie was awesome. Pretty much as soon as we're done recording this, I'm going to see it again. So It really says something. But yeah, I mean, this was a movie that I was not expecting to be not expecting it to be as good as it was. But like from like the moment it started, I was like, oh fuck, this is just, it like sucks you in. I was a little stoned during the scene with Willem Dafoe as Hymir, but he's doing that like wolf ceremony. And I was like, oh fuck, this kind of scared me the fuck out now. Willem Dafoe's looking into my soul, man. Luckily I wasn't looking into his one-eyed monster, so
my main takeaway from this before we really get into the nitty-gritty is that this movie was so good that it made The Green Knight bad. It was basically hits all the same things that Green Knight does, except it has like I'm familiar with the fucking, you know, Sir Gawain and all that shit, but like this tells, even though there's so much ambiguity, it tells a story. It has a pace to it. It doesn't feel like almost episodic. It kind of pushes along. It kind of takes that same like awe that people had of like, movies are back, baby. This is how, you know, this is how you can make a spectacle in this day and age that's not a Marvel movie. And then this just takes that to an extreme while still not being like a kind of in your face, well, I guess if you didn't read Sir Gawain in the original Middle English, then you don't deserve to understand my dumb little movie about a guy who busts on a cool scarf. Like, so I think it kind of like, it literally, not only did I love this, it made me retroactively think less of the Green Knight.
Yeah, like I think that Robert Eggers, and we've touched on it a couple times, like how he's 3 for 3 for us. I second that for sure, and I think he's one of the guys that's kind of carrying the torch not only for horror but for cinema in general. In my
Yeah.
opinion, it's like Eggers, Ari Aster, you know, Jordan Peele. I've liked all their stuff, and they just it's a voice, and it's like you mentioned, you brought up the Marvel movies, and I'm guilty of like kind of hating on their recent output and stuff because it kind of feels very manufactured and like, you know, just all under the same banner.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like every Eggers movie, you can kind of like see a still from it, and you're like, that's a fucking Eggers movie because he just has that voice and that way of like sucking you into that world, man.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it was. It was like you sit down and you're immediately sucked into this world of this dude that's just out for revenge, man, and you follow him along. I was like, I was along for the ride, man, the entire time, and it's visually stunning. And like I said, I don't know anything about. I was I was messaging Scott beforehand. I was like, you know, I don't know anything about like, you know, a lot of the Viking mythology and stuff, but it's like I enjoyed like a lot of like the weird kind of the weird stuff, trippy stuff, visual stuff that
Yeah.
was in this movie.
I think it's fair to say that Steve's the in-house Norse I don't know, consultant, I guess we can say, for this. If, as we saw, if you're watching the video version of this, you can see one of Steve's not white supremacist Nordic tattoos he's got on his arm. Both arms up. Thank you. Don't.
Yeah, that's both arms up.
Please don't shoot. Yeah, there is a lot of interesting ties into myth and everything within this that we'll definitely talk about, and I think that there's a, you know, a nice little segue there. There is like this sort of association now with like Vikings and Norse stuff as being, of course, it has ties to like white supremacy, but also of being like this kind of like hyper masculine, like bro-ish thing. And I think being one, both that in and of itself a romanticization of a culture that existed 1,000 years ago that we couldn't possibly understand every inner machination of, just like every other fucking culture that's ever existed. Into the fact that it is like a Robert Eggers movie. I remember there being tweets like when the first trailer came out that was like, oh great, another hyper masculine revenge fantasy kind of bullshit. And it's like, really, you think the guy that made like the gayest movie of all time, which is The Lighthouse, is like really like like the most like phallic, like a homosexual, like repressed homosexual movie that's ever been made, and then made a movie before that about like how the patriarchy sucks and witches are cool. uh like, oh, you really think he's gonna just like make this movie? And it's like, actually, for this one, guys, I decided my main idea, it's not just Vikings, it's just that I'm going normal. It's like that Xavier Renegade Angel episode when he's like, I'm normal. It's just like yeah, that's what's gonna happen. He just becomes a regular guy for one movie. No, so there's going to be some discussion of that shit coming up too, but it's
My
probably
favorite
commercial
thing is,
time.
yeah. Well, we're doing the live video. We're gonna put this
Ah.
onto YouTube, so I'll find a way to put it in. But
Oh,
my
so are we
favorite.
not doing commercials then? Okay.
Well, I'll slide it in. Don't worry. I got skills. The sneaking it in. The
yeah,
old
you
Waikiki sneaky between the cheekies.
yeah, you definitely have no skill at sliding it in.
No, not at all. But we'll make it work. But yeah, my favorite thing I saw on the Twitter, Elon Musk's new Twitter trademark,
Yeah.
is that people were showing pictures of Robert Eggers and like, oh, of course this man's a white supremacist. Look at him. It's like,
Yeah, he just looks like a dude.
he's got a beard. He's got a beard and like the shaved head of like the slick back hair. It's just like, no, I don't think so. The most white supremacist, racist old people I've met are old men who are balding that are like 300 pounds that sit at my bar and go, Lori Lightfoot, not for me. Like,
What's the deal with this Lizzo? It's like,
why is she
Lizzo.
swinging all about?
Lizzo, more like lizard people that are controlling the government.
One of my no joke favorite regulars will, if you get enough drinks in them, we'll start talking about the deep state, and I just egg him on and have him talk to people at the bar about the deep state, and then stand back and watch people die on the inside. It's fucking fun as shit. My brother-in-law, my sister killed herself, but my brother-in-law, now you got to understand, he worked for the government. He was developing weapons, and then he disappeared because he knew too much.
Scott says egging him on, but he's like taking notes and shit. He's like, wait,
oh yeah.
David Icke.
Yeah, Scott just has a journal that says things I think that are real, and he's just like adding all this stuff into
Hollow
it.
moon theory, lizard people, deep state lizard people.
One of my favorite reviews that I saw for this movie was on Letterboxd, and it said that it's like men will literally avenge father, save mother, and kill Fjolnir before going to therapy. and that's like that's basically like that kind of mentality.
It's 100% true though.
Yeah, but that's the exact kind of mentality that I think that this is like clearly lambasting, and not like, so of course like there's lots of shit to talk about with it, but I think the biggest aspect and the most important to me in my reading of it is how, as much as it like goes hard and is like super fucking cool and gets you amped, especially if you're like, a dumb guy like me, like it is is the fact that it's like so clearly shows how like dumb Amleth is, right? Like he has every fucking chance to go on and move on with his life and not get caught up into the societal expectations of what a man's supposed to do. A man in this period of time is supposed to go and seek revenge and do all the shit. And the movie start, spoilers, he dies. The movie starts with
if you're watching this by now, we do full spoilers.
Yeah.
So if that disappoints you, fuck off. Like
when the movie kind of gets into its second act, and Amleth is like a grown man who's been like with a semi-successful like raiding party for years without ever having thought of having to go back and get revenge. He could have just not done it, and he might have still been alive or died with more glory somewhere, less barren and forgotten than like a shitty little village in like the middle of Iceland. And it keeps going with that, right? There's the moment where he could finally leave with Olga. It's like, well, no. And then that shows, not only is it like a great dramatic bit, but it's also like shows almost his final point of realization, where it's not just I can't go do this, right? This is the society that I'm trapped in, because if I don't, Fjolnir will seek revenge on me, like, because I've perpetuated this cycle, and this is like kind of what this is what happens. It's kind of his final moment of like realization and sublimation into the culture to then go and destroy himself and Fjolnir. So that's kind of cycle is broken. And then what happens? You know, the whole thing supposedly now is going off into a Slavic myth, which is the myth of like the Maiden King and all of that, with Olga and the kids that she's going to have. And that's a whole different society. It's like it's going back to the culture that his culture tried to attack and destroy and blah blah blah. So that's one of the I don't want to get, I could rant about this movie forever, so I'm gonna let you guys get some words in. But I think that that's like the crux, especially, and I think that it's an important point to make because of how much I think people, just because shit is Norse and like it has guys swinging swords and looking cool and being white, like in that sort of environment. I don't mean in general, you know, I'm not talking about white genocide, fake bullshit. But that's what I see as being like one of the biggest kind of detriments or detractors from this movie is kind of coming from that lens.
Yeah, all I heard was like a lot of the criticism was like how this was his shallowest movie, and like that there's not a lot going on besides action and stuff. But you brought up one of the scenes, man, and it is legit heartbreaking.
Yeah.
When he has that choice to make, and he's like, but if I do go with Olga, like she's going to be hunted down, and it's never going to like leave us, like this cycle of violence and revenge and stuff. And it is that theme of fate is brought up like multiple times. He says it throughout the movie, like, this is my fate, like I have to do this kind of stuff. So yeah, I had a problem with that, like a lot of the like some of the detractors saying that this movie wasn't deep and not thematically rich because of some of those scenes that were, you know, incredibly sad to see, and emotional. Like that scene in particular, man, I was like, damn it, because you know what the fuck's gonna happen, man.
Yeah.
I was just really surprised he kissed her neck and he's like, twins. Like he's like the living embodiment of being like the most accurate clear blue pregnancy test possible. He just gently like kisses her neck and is like, oh yeah, you got a boy and a girl in there. Leave him in there for 9 more months.
Well, that's one of the other things I love about this movie is the treatment of myth and the treatment of the world that they live in. They treat it as very real and sure. You know, there's like there's a thing that in like society now we always refer to like old timey beliefs as like mythology and stuff, but there's really no difference between mythology and religion other than the fact most things we call mythology don't have worshipers anymore because the religions that do still exist destroyed them, right? So like this was, you know, you still really don't see that in a lot of things, even like Vikings and whatnot, like the show I should say, like they show their rituals and stuff, but it's always done in the sense of like, and now we do our Yule festival, and this is what this represents, and all that, where it's talking from a point of view that's still like not within that world. People just do and say and see things and do not question them because that is their metaphysics. Like that's the shit that they believe is real. If you took like you see nowadays, you see so many Christian people or whatever, they'll go to a fucking tent revival and see a bunch of snakes doing shit and people speaking tongues, and they just go, yeah, that's cool, that's right. And that's because that's fully in their belief set. So when you see when we see these visions and whatnot, they're not necessarily like, there's a mystical element to it, but I think it's also just from like not even the point of view of Amleth or any of these characters, but from the point of view of the world at that time, of the time period of whoever the saga keeper that might be telling this story is, right? Like he sees that. It's not that he necessarily thinks, oh, twins, oh, you're pregnant or whatever. Like, you know, he could kind of probably notice or tell that she's pregnant, but all this other stuff is like his rationalization because of what he knows. And that those are the only things that he could possibly have reconciled any of what's going on to him as having been, you know. So it's another way in which these people are kind of really caught in that world. And I think that that's a trait that Eggers does really well. It's not just the authenticity of the recreation of the sets or of the costuming, but of doing little tricks to make stuff that's ostensibly the past feel as even though you know, almost feel like it is completely foreign, because it is, you know. You see stuff in part, you know, it's eerie and it's powerful, and but it's also like you're like, what the fuck? And like that's part of it, is because you're almost not supposed to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this one of the things about this movie I did love, what you could refer to as the trippy parts, whether it's you know, Hymir doing the wolf ritual with War Raven and Amleth, or if it's him thinking that a Valkyrie is carrying him away when it's Olga. You know, it's kind of does rely not so much, I think, as a suspension of disbelief, but like understanding you're not watching Braveheart. You're not like watching a movie that's a recreation of something that's recent history. Like the Amlev story is old, but it's probably even older than what's actually been recorded. So the idea of incorporating the myth into it, it makes it theatrical. It's very Shakespearean, which ironic because Hamlet is Amleth. You know, and that's one of those things like, you know, you read Macbeth and you hear the witches doing double, double, toil, trouble. It's got nothing to do with Macbeth, but it's about this idea of fate and ill coming
Right.
towards you. Well, that's the same thing we see during this ritual of watching young Amleth becoming the wolf, because then we see in the act 2 he is the wolf. He's a berserker. Now, or what I forget what the wolfen term is for them, but Oofheden. Thank you, guys. But like I love that they incorporated the myth into the story, and you are supposed to kind of take double takes at certain points, like when he's fighting the Draugr to get the Nightblade. You know, it's it made me want to play Skyrim for like the 20th time, but
Dude,
you know,
yeah.
but also like you see him fight it and then it pans and he's just in front of the corpse again, like it didn't, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't, maybe this is myth, maybe this is something he's doing internally within his mind. Regardless, he's got this fucking badass sword now, and I think that's what really started to suck me in the more I watched this movie, was just how these like little overlaps of the myth and things you do recognize from, if you know like the basics of Norse mythology, just enough to take a movie that could have just been a cool Braveheart clone and made it Conan the Barbarian, but like what Conan the Barbarian should always have been, which is like this epic,
Yeah.
winding tale that's just so fun. And then when you make it visually gorgeous to boot, you know, it just puts that little bow on it. Cinematographer was Jaron Blaschke, who was also for don't know if he was chief cinematographer in The Witch, but he also did The Lighthouse. And he'll probably do every Eggers film knowing the man going forward, because his portfolio at this point is like perfect.
I hope so, man.
Yeah.
It's just another movie that when you watch it and you're like, I don't want to stop watching this movie. I just want to keep looking at it. Like I can't wait to have like a copy of this just to like screenshot shit, because it's just fucking beautiful.
So one of the things that threw me off was like, and this is just like ignorance on my part, is like the idea of like, and like I said, I don't know a lot about like the Viking mythology or Norse mythology, but like the its place of like witches, because like there's one when they're raiding that village and they burn that hut to the ground, and like that was an unsettling image where the people are like hitting on the door and shit inside. And then I think that you meet Bjork, and I believe that she's a witch, or what did you guys get from that?
She's the Cirrus of that Slavic, I guess, village. The thing about the house burning thing is like, that's one of the things that this movie does that I think really goes against this thing is, oh, it's a masculine movie for guys that want to see killing. Like, it's fucking brutal. we watch all of the young boys thrown into a hut and have it burned down because they're going to be the heirs. You know, like this is like this. You can't really call it infanticide. I don't know if there's even a term for it, honestly, but like that's something that was probably, I mean, there are historians that did help with this movie, is an accurate thing that happened. You kill off the males because you don't want them coming back for revenge, and you steal the women because you need to make more males. Like,
Mhm.
and you're watching that building burn, and like, I like looked over at Jenna because I was like, I knew this was gonna be coming, and she's just like, "What the fuck, dude?" I was like, "It's 972 something AD. Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty mild. That's like a Tuesday for them, you know."
Yeah, even that opening scene, man, when they kill his dad and stuff, and you see it in the trailer, but when he's like, bring me the head of the boy, you're like, oh fuck. And then he has a way of like, amping up that music and stuff. And
Yeah.
from there it's like a chase to get to the sea. It's just like, man, that yeah, a lot of child killing in this movie.
Oh yeah. If you hate kids, you're gonna love this film.
Yeah, dude.
I think you brought up a really interesting point though about the witches stuff, and this is where I'm gonna get into some of my nerd shit. So the witches and like seeresses and stuff were like an important part of Norse society, but it's slightly unsure, but there are so many different terms. So the traditional, like what we would almost think of as like a Nordic style witch, was what was known as a vulva, which is a funny name, but it,
Tell me more about your vulva.
Cover your ears, Scott.
And that would be kind of like what we saw with Bjork. And the practice of magic in general is known as shader. But the thing about it is, like, Norse society was very, their gender norms were different, as one may guess, from nowadays. But they also carried weird things. So like Odin, their chief god, the guy that they thought was the coolest for the majority of their existence, was like the god of magic, the god of Seder, and he was the one that like brought magic, then the knowledge of magic, the whole getting rid of his eye to learn all knowledge, and hanging himself on the world tree to learn the runes, all that shit. But if you were a male who practiced magic, despite this, you were considered to be pretty gay. Like there was like a weird thing where like shadesmen were like looked down upon as being like less manly, because magic is supposed to be a woman's thing, even though Odin's the god of magic. So that's part of a couple things that we see. Like Hymir's play is the fool, right? He's like almost like a court jester, but then he is Warraven's shademan, and he has to like climb down into a hole to do it, and they have to do it in secret, and he's laughed off as being like a weirdo. And then once Amleth moves to Iceland, he finds this other shadesman who has Hymir's head, and that guy's, again, he's like a weird little freak secluded in a cave away from everyone else. He's a nasty little cave freak. And and it's kind of like you have all this mysticism built in, but we also have and see during the festivals, like Fjolnir, who seems to be a worshiper of Frey specifically, they have their priests and stuff, and the priests aren't doing much different than any of these shadesmen, but they're referred to as Godar or Godi instead. And it's like there's this weird hierarchy where it's like, you're basically like, to us, you look at it and you're like, you're basically doing the same shit. Like it's all just like throw like put a cool stick in blood and then like spray it at shit and then like fucking kill something and then like make a bird sound and then like fuck off. Like it's all like the same, but it's like, no, that's only for do for gay guys and women, and then but these are the priests and they're chill. Yeah, and they're not gay, and like, and it's all normal. Like,
Is that like the modern like I guess interpretation of that, like Queer Eye for the Straight Eye? It's just like, come with me, I'm gonna give you some accessories, let's go, I'm gonna teach you some stuff and you're gonna be a better person for it. Like,
queer eye for
always
the one eye.
like, you should always trust strange men living in caves in the forest or under buildings. First off, that's like the number one lesson of this movie because they're always right. But yeah, the He Witch thing, I was doing a little research too. I don't know for Hymir, but I guess the He Witch, who was played by Ingvar Sigurdsson, not only did he actually learn to throat sing for the role, which is cool as hell. If I had a lot of time in my hand, I would add that to my list of things to do. He's actually got somewhat feminine garb on, according to some things that the historians had said that were working on this movie. Again, because it's a female practice of doing magic, even though Odin, who I guess is clearly bisexual, then if he does magic, but also, you know, is the All Father. There's a whole like interesting thing, like Steve brought up, of just how like the dichotomy is like men kill, woman magic, man magic, man gay. But you know, it's also the thing is like, if you know, Amlev had maybe just been a little bit, I don't know, less of a dude, he probably would have been a pretty decent life, you know, raiding, pillaging, dancing around fires if your bros, you know, dressed as a wolf, killing a bunch of
Smashing
people,
beers.
smashing
Yeah.
beers, puking when you're done, as we saw them, and they're all like, oh fuck, like like we watched these guys kill like and raid an entire town and then go through like the hangover process like immediately after.
They were all you know, level 5 barbarians with the berserker subclass, and they finished their frenzy, and so now they each got their level of exhaustion. Like, it's just the normal stuff that happens after you go into your barbarian rage. They had that, it's the lengths you go to for that +2 strength bonus and a bonus action attack.
Did you get a bonus hit die as well?
No, not in 5e, but
One thing we had to talk about is like Nicole Kidman's performance in this, because that's one of the things that I thought that this movie did a great job at, is like, it's and again, spoilers, you know, we've made it this far, but he's making his journey all the way back to save his mother, you know, as his chant, he repeats it throughout the film. And then you meet the mother, and she's it's just weird twist of like, your father was like this asshole, and I wanted to marry your uncle. Our kids were made out of love, but if you kill your uncle, then we'll fucking make a family. And I was just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's really weird her going from Meet the Ricardos to this. It's like, oh, Lucy, what the fuck? Like, you got some splaining to do because it's creepy.
Yeah.
And like, I knew something was coming, but also this is a movie that was also written by Sion, who did Lamb. So I was also really afraid when I was watching this movie that it was just going to end and I was going to be incredibly upset. But when we get to this scene with her, like, she kind of not only like stole that scene and stole a lot of what she did in the film. Kind of noticed Nicole Kidman as being like much more of an actress than I kind of gave credit to, and I don't watch a lot of movies with her in it, but like
Batman Forever, baby.
Batman Forever, Days of Thunder. Let's not forget Days of Thunder and Eyes Wide Shut, which
what was that? What was that Australia movie? Was it literally called Australia?
I think it was
like
called
starring
Australia.
Hugh
Yeah.
Jackman.
Yeah.
I was
The
getting that
movie-
confused with Hidalgo.
Yeah, Australia, that I went and saw with an ex-girlfriend and her mom and didn't realize it was like a 3-hour and 15-minute movie, and after like 20 minutes was like, fuck Australia.
You now, to be clear, she was not your ex-girlfriend when you went to see the movie, right?
No.
Because that would have been like really, that would have been on you.
Fucking moron. You're not going to get back together to her watching Australia. Not even like a single kangaroo boxing match in that movie, to my recollection, either, which was really disappointing.
But Nicole Kidman was the role that I like, the casting, I should say, that I was the most like eyebrow raised about when I first heard it, but I thought that she did a phenomenal job. Personally, I I am like slightly snobbish with a lot of this stuff. I think there's so much bad Viking, quote unquote Viking shit that exists. So I'm always really reticent when people come in and like to start doing quote unquote Viking accents. Um yeah, it's easier to suspend disbelief when you just get a couple Scandinavians and you throw them in there. But I thought she did a good job. I thought Ethan Hawke did a phenomenal job. Willem Dafoe didn't really do an accent. He just did a weird voice, which is fine because this guy was just like he was just like a weird guy, so that's like cool. And he just has a fucking strange ass voice to begin with. Like, but I did think all the performances were great. Anya Taylor-Joy, I think, was once again very good. I just personally don't get what the deal is with her. like
she just looks like an alien. She looks like an alien to me, and she's not attractive, and she's not a good actress. But sometimes there are certain scenes in this movie. Actually, the where I preferred her the most was in the weird kind of mythological, mystic scenes where like she's holding the babies and she's like lounging. And I was like, this makes sense. Like she should kind of look goddess or ethereal, like. And she delivered the lines fine, but it's just she always looks like she's like a 14-year-old girl to me, and it's just weird like watching like somebody that's like 25 play this like strong woman. And it's not that like the character's bad, but I kind of a little bit couldn't take her seriously. But then on the opposite side, I was like, Ethan Hawke's gonna fucking blow. Like this is not gonna be good. And I was like, Ethan Hawke was like legitimately not bad for like the 8 minutes of screen time he had. Like,
I love Ethan Hawke. I was a little like, I don't know, but then he was like, okay, Ethan Hawke's killing it. But I mean, I think that it goes without saying that Alexander Skarsgård was fucking phenomenal, and I think that this is the kind of movie and the kind of role where people will tend to talk about all of the is because his is like it's the sort of like rote sort of like cool attractive action hero, and so everyone's going to talk about how cool Willem Dafoe was and how good Nicole Kidman was, how cool Bjork was that she came and made a movie again. But I think that he does have like a really phenomenal like linchpin performance and a pretty wide range of emoting for someone who is kind of also trying to inhabit that role where you're not supposed to really show your emotions. You're like a strong stoic warrior, but like it all just kind of flows out.
He's like not even like a stoic warrior. I mean, he's a legitimate killing machine. He's a berserker. And then you see him and it's very subtle, but like the dude can sell a lot with just a little bit of like inflection in his voice and just the way he like looks at Anya Taylor-Joy, the way he would like looked at his mother when that whole scene happened. And he's a phenomenal actor. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen Generation Kill, but he's great in Generation Kill.
No, I love him in general. He's one of my favorite actors.
That is a good point about like the stoic hero where like a bunch of the shit's kind of happening around him, because like it kind of reminded me of Mad Max Fury Road with Tom Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that character's just kind of like in this crazy ass fucking world, and his job is kind of just to be the like not mute, but like just the silent like berserker hero type. But yeah, dude, he was fucking killer in this movie though.
And dare I say, a damn good looking man. But again, he was in True Blood too as
Eric Northman.
So I'm assuming there's going to be a crossover coming soon. I was really waiting for like a scene where he just like goes up to Anya Taylor-Joy and just goes, "Suck it."
That's the other guy though. That's not him, you
Isn't
bitch.
I thought it's someone who goes, "Suck it."
No, you dumb bitch. That's Stephen Moyer as Bill Compton.
He's like,
it's fucking Bill. Fuck. Listen, every time I watched like 2 seasons of True Detective, and I was just
of True Detective
or True Blood. True
don't even
Blood
know what the
Detective.
fuck you're talking
True
about.
Blood
I told you
Detective.
not to
where-
fuck that up.
True Blood Detective, where Matthew McConaughey becomes a vampire to hit on a woman that lives in the bayou. It's season 1 of True Detective.
They're vampires in a car, smoking, investigating murders. I'd see that.
I couldn't wait for Alexander Skarsgård to look Anna Paquin in the eyes in the classic show True Detective and say his famous line, "Bobby."
Oh God, fuck. Fuck. Now that completely threw me off. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit of the interesting thing about this movie. So Eggers wrote this movie. He wanted to do this with Skarsgård. He basically goes on vacation. He runs into Sion, who again unfortunately did Lamb, which I have a hard time liking it all. But this again, one of those movies that's like really beautiful to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I was like, fuck, this is gonna be a movie where it's gonna talk about the futility of revenge. And like I was really expecting him to like just like to be on the boat and just be done with it and just been like, ah, fuck. Like or like when he's talking to his mother, I'm like, it's gonna end like right here. And then it's just gonna be him screaming into like, the cosmos or something, and then it just goes to credits, which thank fuck it didn't happen. But got a little bit more of respect for the dude, and not to say that he's is not a very good writer, but of course he gets on in the movie, so he brings Bjork in. It's like the weirdest like well, I'm gonna make a movie with my friend Alexander Skarsgård. I ran to Sion. He said, oh, you can go ahead and get Bjork into the movie. Bjork's doing the movie, so now I can definitely get blah 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 to come in. Like it was just this really funny like snowball effect that they got to get all these people like involved, which again this makes me think Robert Eggers at this point is going to be able to do whatever fucking movie he wants, because he just has to go on vacation apparently, and then he just gets his cast and crew while doing it. Like it's a wild skill to have. But
Now, I remember like hearing an interview with him on I think it was the Shockwaves podcast, talking about this Viking epic that he wanted to put together. But another movie that he's been talking about like a ton is his version of Nosferatu. Now, do you guys think that'll ever happen? I know.
I think at this point for sure it's gonna happen.
I think that would happen. I would love to. I would love to see that. I couldn't imagine. I don't know. I couldn't. It's one of those things though too. It's like you almost wonder, like, well, what does he do with it?
Mm-hmm.
How does he heighten it? And because as you were talking about earlier, like he has a distinctive style. Like you were saying, you can look at any frame and kind of be able to go Eggers, and that is because I think he is like one of the last true like auteurs working in cinema right now, like actually making art and doing filmmaking, and in like an important way, because you could look at any Marvel movie and go, oh well, that's Marvel, but they have 105 different directors and 3,000 producers, and there's a reason why they all look the same.
It's like a difference between like a consistency of a style across a franchise with a consistency of style that is genuine to the auteur, to the director, which is just something that is like it's so fucking rare now. I mean, I feel like the dude could do like a comedy even, or like a dark comedy, like completely go away from these historical films and do something that's kind of like almost like, or like a mockumentary. I feel like he could do it. It would still look like Eggers, but it would still have this monumental weight behind it, where you're not going to see that with any of those Marvel movies that we always shit on,
Yeah, and I think that question about him doing a Nosferatu, I think what's catching me is I've seen some of that too, and he specifically says Nosferatu. He doesn't say I want to make a Dracula movie. I want to make a vampire movie. So he specifically wants to do something like akin to like the Murnau Nosferatu, and then you think of like, well, what versions of that do we really have? We have like the Kinski, like Nosferatu the vampire, and then you have like weirder takes on it, like I guess like you can't really call it, but maybe like Shadow of the Vampire sort of, which would be funny if you just got Willem Dafoe to play
Yeah, I was about to say, is he
Nosferatu
just gonna,
again.
is he just gonna be like, Willem, one more time, baby?
You did the Green Goblin again after 20 fucking years. You can't do Nosferatu for me. I put you in all my fucking movies. So like I just don't know what he would. I mean, he must have a vision, and I'd be on board with it. And much in the same way where, to be completely honest, I loved him after Witch and Lighthouse. When I heard he was going to make a Viking movie, I went, damn. And that's simultaneously like such a thing, pinpoint, like sniper shot directly into my brain for me to like, Vikings and Skarsgård might be attached, and it's Eggers. But I also was like, I don't know what the fuck he would do with a Viking movie. And then this came out, and I was like, holy shit. Like,
This
I get
is what
it.
he did with a Viking movie.
And so I feel like that's kind of how I'm feeling about a Nosferatu. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck he could do. And then what's probably going to come out, I'm going to go, damn, yeah.
Scott, you brought up like the auteurs in the film industry and stuff. Like, I didn't see like a final number with this box office, but I know it opened at like number 4.
It was like number 4, and it was, I think it's done a little bit over 12 million, which is nowhere near its budget, obviously. But it's gonna be one of those movies that it's probably gonna get nominated for a shit ton of awards, whether you give a fuck about that or not. That does drive people in, which sells the movie. It's going on demand, I think, next week, and it's probably gonna make a ton because, at least, I don't know about you guys, the last couple movies I've gone to, and it's been awesome for me, is like the theaters have been pretty much fucking completely empty. It's either been like
Yeah, it
me
was like
and
that for
Jenna,
the
and like
Batman, man.
I think there was more people at Morbius than when we saw the Northman, which is really disappointing. But like I think they're gonna recoup some losses for sure. But I also just don't think it matters if this movie makes back its budget, because it's just, there's not going to be another movie like this for a long time. But at the same time, I hope there's a lot more fucking awesome, like, well done, gritty sword and sorcery, if that's what we want to call this, or like, action epics like this more frequently now, because there's definitely a market for it.
Well,
even if it's just white dudes that just like weapons, like.
I'd like that. I would. I mean, I'm the exact kind of guy that would love if there were more like cool action adventures, sword movies. But I don't even care about that. I want more like larger budget, bigger scale movies that are made by like interesting fucking artists again.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that kills me. I just want more movies, not exactly like this, but like give I was making a joke, but give the fucking Green Knight guy some, the Ghost Story Green Knight guy some fucking money and have him make like a cool movie. I mean, some art house stuff is never going to reach that level, and those guys aren't going to, you're not going to want to do that. But like the Ari Asters and Eggers of the worlds, like, yeah, they should be getting $50 million a movie to go do something cool. The Jordan Peele movies keep ramping up. I'm excited for Nope. That looks like it already like is going to be going in a lot weirder places than even us did and stuff. So it should at least be interesting. That's what I want. I just want interesting fucking movies to exist again.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with that. Yeah,
it kind of like it kind of fucked me up a little bit, because I got out of this a couple nights ago, and then I Googled and like researched, the box office and stuff like that. And it was like, fuck, man. Like, but then you got stuff like Morbius, like we brought it up, but it's like, it's still in theaters. It's probably raking in a good amount. Like,
Oh, it's made back its budget, which was like 60 million. Like that movie made 60 million fucking dollars. Like that's such a kick in the dick. And I didn't even work on, the Northman, but I'd be like, are you fucking serious?
Yeah. And it's like, again, people enjoy their own stuff, and I don't want to sound like a film snob, but it's just like, it fucking sucks that like some like original, like just well-crafted, well-made movie, they're almost like isn't not that there isn't a place for it, but it's like it's just hard to get people out in droves to see this kind of stuff, and it fucking sucks.
And
Well,
I also
yeah.
think that they are sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I
You're good.
also think that they are these companies are starting to shoot themselves in the foot because they're coming back with the only in theaters thing after COVID.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think, you know, a movie like this, if you put it up and like someone fucking stream it, I know I probably would have fucking rented it 2 or 3 times already, honestly. If
I
it
would have,
were
yeah.
if it were available. Personally, I mean, not to say that that would, you know, be it would make up all the losses, but I don't see why all movies. I don't see why all movies should not be having this availability to be on streaming now. They've proved the concept, and you know, either get a deal going for the streaming rights somewhere, or just do a rental via Apple, Google, YouTube, Voodoo, whatever the fuck, and all that shit, because I think you're only hamstringing yourself. And I think movies like this were going to be destined to not do great because it is like a weird auteur movie. So you're not going to get like all the massive people that are going to come out for a big blockbuster. And you still have a bunch of people that are going, it's a fucking pandemic. They just told me I don't need to wear my masks anymore, even though all the numbers are going up. I'm not going to a fucking movie theater. Are you kidding me? Luckily, I got 3 boosts. I got 3 shots, and I got COVID like 2 months ago. So I'm like, fuck it. Let me go see Morbius. I don't care. Let me get
Ready to
out of
run.
the house.
Ready to run
You go
through
to
a wall,
Morbius
baby.
and come back
Yeah.
and you are Morbius.
Exactly.
Dude, so I had one like question about the Northman. It was a scene in it, and they referred to like wolves and stuff throughout. But I wanted to know if you had any insight into like the mythology and stuff, because I know you know your shit when it comes to that.
Mhm.
But it's the scene when he, I think it's right before the final attack when he goes to save his mom. And he fucking, it made me want to get up out of my chair and fucking run through the wall. I was so pumped up. And metal music is playing in the background. Like, you know, this is a total metal movie. But he howls like a dog, dude. And all the dogs start howling. And then the fucking dog attacks what's
Oh,
his
yeah.
fuck.
Yeah.
I was like so
Mjolnir.
pumped up at that. You want to talk about like testosterone movie, man? I was like, holy shit, that is the baddest motherfucking thing I've ever seen.
Oh, them dancing around the fire before getting like the berserker ritual. I was like texting the dude that I'm joining his rat hockey league, and I'm like, we're fucking doing this before every
Dude.
game. We're fucking marching around a circle in the locker room, slamming our sticks on our chests and howling before we get out there. So
Yeah.
everyone's fucking pumped the fuck up. Like I was watching that, I was like, yeah, I want to dance
I
around
almost
fire.
howled in I almost howled in the fucking theater.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting nods to mythology with the animals. So the thing I would say with the wolves and the dogs would definitely be a call to, as Scott mentioned before, which is the Ulfheden. And with the Ulfheden were basically berserkers that Ulf means wolf and Heden literally means headed. So they were like wolf-headed warriors. They would wear wolf skins. The phrase berserker comes from bear shirt because they would just wear fucking, you know, bear pelts into battle. Amleth's nickname, or the pseudonym he goes by when he's with the berserkers, is Bjornulf, which, as they say in the movie, is bear wolf. So I think there's a play to that. The Ulfheden are specifically generally attested to as being like specifically like Odin worshipping berserkers. It's hard to even call them berserkers. I would say warriors, but they do the same thing. Obviously, there's mythology that they possibly imbibed various hallucinogenic mushrooms and other weird shit before they fought. So there's that. Odin also, in addition to the two ravens that a lot of people know, Hugin and Munin, he also has two wolves, Gary and Freki. So there's a lot of and Valhalla is specifically the afterlife for people that are chosen by Odin. A lot of people don't know this. There's actually there's multiple afterlives in Norse mythology. Half of the slain goes to Valhalla, the other half go to Sisrumnir, which is Freya's hall. And then if you are like bad or just get sick and die normal, you just go to hell.
Holy shit.
Uh, so as we see, like Amleth, both in his personality and the Bjornulf personality, clearly aligns himself with Odin. So I think a lot of that the things that we see is this Odin kind of imagery, and we saw that even with his father being a war raven, again a raven, and then part of this thing, the other thing that's specific I find too with that is we see Fjolnir doing multiple rituals and prayers and stuff to Frey. So the gods in Norse mythology have contentious relationships with one another. And while people, there's a kind of a bunch of different attestations about this, but a lot of people would have patron gods. Like someone would be like, Thor is my god, or Odin is my god, and they would go to them for everything. Some people would go, well, you pray to Frey for this, and you pray to Odin for this, and whatnot. But there was a kind of weird inner conflict between the gods, not just in the myths, but in the worship and the worshipers and the adherents to it. So we even see there's a moment where I forget who says it, but someone says to Fjolnir something about, your god of erections, like in a dismissive thing. He's a god of, fertility, god of wine, god of farmers and whatnot, as opposed to Odin, who's a warrior god, a poet god, the chief amongst all gods. So there is also this kind of, I think, specifically the howling to the wolves and him being released by ravens from his prison, and all of that kind of goes into this kind of Odin versus Frey sort of thing that they're kind of trying to get at, where they're same gods that they both probably even worship, but they've kind of aligned themselves to it. So there's almost this conflict that's playing out in small form that's bigger than them even.
Hell yeah, man. That was such a cool fucking idea, dude.
Just when the ravens are taking him down while he's being hung, like they're pecking the ropes down, I was like, oh, that's just fucking awesome. And then you just see Odin briefly, you're like, hell yeah. Fucking the old wizened man. I was like, I love Odin's one of the coolest like gods in mythology to me, because he's the all father. He's considered this warrior god, but a lot of depictions of him are essentially Gandalf, because Gandalf is based off of in a lot of ways. And just like, that's fucking cool.
Gandalf was one of the in several sources is a name even given to Odin.
Yeah. You see that scene. I was just waiting for like Black Sabbath, the wizard, to come on in the background and be like, oh yeah.
This movie makes me feel like a dumbass though. To be fair, like this is only one watch. Like I've only seen this one time, and I feel like all his movies you kind of have to see like twice or three times to like, get a lot of the shit, man. But like I think like on first watch, I saw this as like a Conan, type kind of movie. And then when you think about it and break it down, it's like I'm even like adjusting my rankings on his films over here as we speak. Like there is a lot of shit in this movie that's like much deeper than the eye and the beautiful visuals and stuff.
It's like Conan meets like the Seventh Seal. Like it's like it's got this action, but it's got like this deep Norwegian Nordic introspectiveness to it, of this talk about like death and fate, and you're just like, fuck, Conan the Barbarian never made me think this much on the ride home.
I mean, it's no
Well,
Beastmaster, but
I think that's like, you guys are bringing up a really interesting point, because I saw like an interview with Eggers the other day, and he's like, yeah, my favorite director is Bergman, and one of my biggest influences, one of the movies I watched the most as a kid is Conan the Barbarian. And so it's like, I definitely, that's 100% what this movie is. It's like Conan the Barbarian by Bergman, like, essentially, like. And I think what makes this movie work is I've been doing the same thing I do every episode, which is like say a bunch of bullshit about stuff, and kind of like try to like grasp at straws and to make bigger assumptions about things. And I think that they are there for this. But the thing primarily that I think is what makes this like a perfect movie is it does do all that, but it's also supremely the movie that fucks the hardest out of any movie I've ever seen. Like, this movie just goes fucking hard. Like, I watch like 80s action movies all the time and stuff, and there's like, there's some things that might have more outright gore, there's some things that might have more outright violence, but it's the groundedness in which the shit happens. So when things that are crazy or wild happen, they pop, and it doesn't shy away from the violence, but it also doesn't needlessly like go crazy with it. So I find it like the level of like realism to some of the violence, it makes it so fucking impactful. And then there's just cool shit happening, like when he grabbed that spear, like that was sick, right? Like,
That's like
yeah.
the start of like one of the greatest
Oh.
fight scenes I've seen, where he grabs a spear, he throws it back, which is in and of itself based off of a Nordic myth about some warrior whose name I don't have written down. And then it just starts, and that whole fucking fight is just a tracking shot. Him running, following him, climbing that wall, just like axing dudes, pulling them down, jumping down, just doing that big berserker walk where it's like, which is
yeah.
the coolest thing in the world. Like, I just want to walk every time I go to the gym now. I'm gonna run around shirtless, screaming, and then I'm gonna walk around hunched over like this, and just
It
be like
show-
lifting, like just like ugh, like, and just
Cut to the
him.
camera guys showing you doing that and it looking like so comical and shit.
I'm a noodle man.
Yeah.
But like, you watch that whole scene, and when I was watching it, I'm like watching the violence, but you don't see all of it, but it's still brutal. But then it's like clicking in my head, like, this is a fucking tracking shot. This is like Scorsese and Goodfellas following, him through the
Yeah.
club. Like, it's like that, but like
Yeah.
extremely brutal as we watch him just walking by, just slit this dude's throat, axe this dude. Like, he's so nonchalant about it. He's just like this impossible force, and then you just see them, they're all like, oh fuck, blah. But it's such a great fucking, like, that's the first like combat scene we really see
Yeah.
of him, and it's just like, oh, this movie's gonna be really good now. Like, there's no way this is gonna be bad. There's nothing possible that could happen that could ruin this movie, besides like Jordan Peele shows up, and then like he was a clone the whole time, folks.
Or- Yeah, like aliens land at the end. If that would have happened, I would have been like,
It was a simulation the whole time.
I think my head would have just blown out the back, like if that would have happened. But yeah, it's cool, like following this guy, because it's like that's legit. All he knows is killing, and it's like he's just killing. Like you just mentioned, like he's killing just nonchalantly, because it's like that's all he fucking knows.
Like,
and
he's
it's
so
like,
good at it. It's like a
Yeah.
master carpenter just building a birdhouse. He could probably do it blindfolded. He's just walking through, and just like he anticipates everything he's seeing. He's just a killing machine, and he's just so fucking cool.
And I was so happy when he killed that little smug fuck, man. I hated that motherfucker. Like the king's like true son, where he's just like
Oh,
looking
yeah.
like that, like the whole movie. I was like, oh, I can't wait till they kill that motherfucker, man.
Not only did he kill him, which was fucking just straight up like, damn, like straight up took his heart, just so Fjolnir could not have his heart when they do the Viking ceremony. Which, another thing again, of the historical accuracy, like that is kind of thought how that death ceremony would go. Like the idea of beheading the horse to ride him to Valhalla with a Valkyrie, the also, by the way, because he stole his heart, he shouldn't be able to go to Valhalla, if I'm remembering my Nordic rules and regulations. But like, all of that, like
Yeah, section A, subsection Y. Yeah.
Oh yeah, see, no heart, no admittance. But just like that. First to go from the Nicole Kidman scene where he straight up is like, "Wait, my mom hates me. Wait, my mom wants to fuck me. Wow, fuck. I'm gonna kill my friend here that I grew up with essentially really briefly when he was a baby. I'm gonna take his heart out. Then I'm gonna go." Like it's just like it's one crazy scene to another. You're just like, whoa, what the like? It just this movie doesn't stop. The pacing is so good. Like it's. I think at this point we could pretty much argue now how we want to rate the Eggers film before we rate this movie because it's another Eggers for me that's a 5-star movie and the dude can do no wrong in my book, which is disgusting almost. Like it's perverse that this guy exists and that we get to watch these movies. Like you're like now I gotta feel like I have to be on eggshells every time a new movie comes out. Like is he gonna do it again?
Shells.
It's pretty cool. Like that, like you said, just like living. It feels like we're coming through another like kind of renaissance in a way because if these guys get the support that I hope they do, because it's like I was listening. I think again it was Shockwaves, but they were interviewing one of the Rebecca McKendry is on that show, and she's like a PhD film class at USC or something like that. But she was asking her kids about like Ari Aster in particular, and they were like, "Yeah, we see him as like the modern day Kubrick and stuff." And I had never really like put that together, but it's like these guys are like, the John Carpenters, the Cronenbergs, of the past that we like, reminisce and like look at nostalgic wise so much, but it's like we're living through their golden age, which is pretty cool.
Does that make Jordan Peele Hitchcock without all the diddling and harassing women though? Because that's actually like an improvement at that point.
Who is the Brian De Palma? That's all I care about. Brian De Palma.
Also, as a quick side note, since we mentioned Cronenberg, we also saw the preview for the Cronenberg flick that's coming out. I am so fucking intrigued. But again, it's Cronenberg. I'm like, it's gonna be great, but I'm also like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
It's not even body horror. It's like they're living inside a body that's got instruments that are like body parts. Like it's gonna be incredibly grotesque and disgusting, and I can't take Jenna to see that because there will definitely be some eyeball shit, and she won't speak to me for a week.
No, you should absolutely take her to see that, but
she wants to talk to me for a week. That's a really good point.
He's making up for all the cosmopolises and maps to the stars by throwing in some gross shit.
Yeah.
Though I do like Cosmopolis, but
so how do we want to rank this? Do we want to go like 3 all around and then 2 all around and 1 all around, or how do you guys want to do this?
Yeah, let's do that. I like that idea.
All right, Travis, you're the guest. You go first.
So I made an edit, and again, these are all 5-star movies to me. Like I fucking love all these movies. But at number 3, it would have to be The Lighthouse for me, and just the cosmic weirdness of it. Again with him kind of implanting mythology in it, the brilliant performances of Pattinson and William Dafoe. I wasn't as worried of the Battinson, when that was announced. But I had to check this out before I was like, okay, this motherfucker can rock it. But just that isolation of these two guys in this lighthouse and something weird is going on. Those are like my kind of movies. Just like I'm a huge fan of David Lynch. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. And I just love when something's off and something's amiss and something weird's going on. So just from the cosmic terror standpoint, I fucking love The Lighthouse, but I think it gets edged out by his next 2.
So you go Lighthouse 3, Witch number 2.
We're going. We're doing do you not fucking listen? We just
No, I know I don't listen.
describe
But
what we're doing.
I'm trying to instigate
He
him.
took a hit of the pen in between.
No, I did not smoke when I went to take a piss break.
Yeah, when
Yeah, he did. 100% he did.
he smoked jankum and then he came back all janked up.
Yeah,
I
he's
had
chugging a
salvia.
beer
My
and
world's
shit.
all really blue right now. I'm actually in blue velvet.
Yes.
I think for my third movie, I'm gonna say The Witch, and I love The Witch for a lot of reasons, and I think it's definitely the. I don't even want to say it's the creepiest atmosphere. It's almost the atmosphere of The Witch is creepy because they're fucking Puritans, and I have such a weird fascination with Plymouth Colony and the Puritans themselves because that being actually like the most recent history of something that we can actually have like notes about is so bizarre to me, and it's like that whole watching that movie is terrifying because of just how that family's zealotry pretty much put them in that position. um and I think it's a great movie, but I definitely think if I had to rank them, it's got to be number 3, almost purely for the fact as well as that I think the things that are going on in the other 2 films just do outshine it. But in terms of again doing a cool thing of witchcraft that is historically accurate, which I love that shit. Um, Ralph Iverson is great in that movie, as is Anya Taylor-Joy. I mean, there's not anything about that movie that's bad. And everyone that's watching this or listening, we've covered The Witch, that we love The Witch. Um, but I gotta say it's the lowest man in the totem pole compared to the other 2 at this point.
Nice.
I have to agree. I think The Witch is a phenomenal movie. I think when comparing it to these 2, you definitely it's better than so many people's magnum opuses. So it's like without sounding like I'm sucking Eggers off too much, it's just he really is on another level from a lot of people, but there are still some things you can see that you might have wanted to be a little better or a little more fleshed out that might have happened were it not a debut film, or did he have a little bit more money or something. And I wholeheartedly believe that if he were somehow able to make The Witch again, almost in like a Funny Games situation, where right, like, oh, I made it in German, okay, but let me make it in English, but let me also like make some changes, I think it would be his best movie. But it doesn't have like that extra level on top of it. I don't feel quite as immersed into it as I do with Lighthouse and Northman. And I feel slightly vindicated by this because even though it's like kind of ancillary, he did say that he liked Witch, but he didn't feel like he could have done everything he did and whatever. And I kind of feel that. I kind of like when I heard him say that, I'm like, that kind of vindicates me a little bit. I mean, one can only imagine what the fuck else he had in his head that he wasn't able to get it into that. But you almost kind of do wish that there was like an addendum to it somehow, or a recut or something. So I would say Witch is at 3, but it's still, to be clear, it is still better than anything the guys that wrote Morbius have ever made.
Even Gods of Egypt. Are you sure you want to make that statement?
Even Gods of Egypt.
All right. So my number 2, right? So my number 2, let me just preface this before I get attacked by the berserkers here. I got to say my number 2 is The Northman. And I think it's like I said, both of these movies, these next 2 movies are 5 stars for me. And we've covered The Northman in detail. I think it's brilliant, but after only one watch, I still would put it at And as we were sitting here talking, see, because I had the Lighthouse at number 2 and I had the Northman at number 3, but I was like, man, as we're sitting here talking, it's like it is fucking remarkable, like what he was able to do with this. And I think that bleeds or that shows with these top 2 on my list, like that attention to detail and stuff, and these creating of the worlds as they were, back during the times when these events were popping up and stuff. But yeah, my number 2 would be the Northman.
See, I'm in like the opposite camp of you only because I've only seen The Lighthouse once, which is when it came out. And I am kind of in this pickle right now. And I think I am going to say The Lighthouse at 2. And that is going to be partially because I've only seen it once and I haven't gotten to re-experience it again. And I just got over my mermaid fetish. So maybe this might be a good time to jolt that back up again.
You're like, it was just too hot at the time.
So hot. I love the movie. That is definitely a movie that when I saw it, and it still has stuck with me. And I knew that Pattinson could act. I knew Willem Dafoe could act. And they are an incredible duo. Everything about that movie, and as we've talked about, the cosmology of it, the way it's shot. I just don't know if I can make it number 1 with the Northman being out now. And I think it's completely just because I'm just a dude that just really enjoys violence.
Yeah. You just got a raging hard on, bud, and you're just like, I want to axe something.
I want to avoid sea creatures at all costs.
I'm going to have to say that for me, actually, number 2 is going to be blank, and there is a tie for first.
Oh, you're being that guy.
And I also want to say that specifically, not just as a cop-out, but it's actually going to make most people hate me more. I also say that because I do think that there's that much of a, despite all being 5-star movies, I do think that there is that much of a gulf between The Witch and Lighthouse and Northman for me. I do think that those 2 are in like another echelon. So it's almost less so that I want those 2 to be tied so much as I do think there needs to be like a bit of breathing room between The Witch and the other ones. The Witch is a phenomenal movie, but Lighthouse and Northman are very next level. And if I absolutely had to pick one to be first, I would probably err on the side of the Northman. But I think that the acting in Lighthouse is superb. There is, while Northman is the cinematography is beautiful and everything, Lighthouse is so artistically well composed.
Oh yeah.
Between the aspect ratio and the film grain and everything itself and the lighting, I think that the amount of the way that they did the effects in Lighthouse compared to some of the effects and stuff in I think that being able to make a movie that was that intimate and that was essentially like a 2-hander. I mean, there's like 2 other characters that appear for 1 second in the entirety of Lighthouse.
Yeah.
I think that it is like that was a monumental like artistic achievement, where the Northman is like an artistic achievement as well, but it also is like pure cinema. It's only two hours long. You can be an art house freak and find stuff that you love. You can be a dumb guy and go in and just think it's super fucking cool. Like I think that the Northman succeeds on so many levels, as allegory, as a straight story, as acting, as art. I don't think that it would be as polarizing as Lighthouse is. I know some people that don't have terrible taste in movies that absolutely hate The Lighthouse. I can get it. I think that they're objectively wrong. but like I can get where someone can watch that and not do something for them. uh i think I think the Northman, it's hard to really make that argument. This is kind of like this quote unquote heightened blockbuster people have been, asking for some of these Marvel movies and other big things that come out to be like, well, do the action but have a more poignant story. Well, here it is. So I I think that the Northman might edge it out if it has to, but I would say that they're both tied at 1 with a gap in 2.
Interesting thing now that I'm kind of thinking about all this together too. That's something that the Lighthouse and the Witch do really well, which is something that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Is the claustrophobia, the closeness of everything in those films.
Yes.
Where this really does feel like an epic. Like we're seeing this dude go through his life and he's traveling and he's not only going through this ancient world where what we're seeing, I don't want to say ancient, this Iron Age world, but also like you're seeing these fantastical things that we see, whether they're real or they're not. We see the gates of Valhalla. We're at the gates of hell for the final battle, in this volcano. Um, there's much, even in those little tiny scenes, there is this implication of just this wide swathe of world that we haven't even touched on. That's something about that, just being the kid that grew up on and still does D&D and fantasy novels and stuff, that like it just scratches that itch that I've been like craving probably since, I don't know, the Lord of the Rings trilogy came out. I don't think there's been anything, and even in retrospect, those movies, while I love them, I don't know if they hold up to this, because you can do it in 2 hours and 15 minutes. You get everything you need that you could get, in a 9 hours, like
Yeah.
it's a wild achievement.
The only film that I feel has kind of reached a level close to this for me, for like that particular itch, like you said, was like Valhalla Rising.
Yeah.
And in comparison, like, I don't know, like
Also got Mads Mikkelsen too, so
I do love Mads Mikkelsen, but I almost think that it almost detracts. And almost like, again, like I think this movie was so good, it's actually like actively detracting enjoyment from other movies for me.
Yeah.
And I think that The Lighthouse was phenomenal, and up until this movie I was calling it probably my favorite movie. I just think that this is such a masterclass. I don't know, I'm running out of things to say without sounding too whole sniffy.
So yeah, so my number 1, right? Yeah, I think my number 1 still has to be The Witch, man. Just like you said, this Puritan family, and it's just like takes you back to I think the 1600s is when it's set, and
yeah,
you get that all this stuff that it's based on, like the folklore, folk tales, and this historically accurate look at witchcraft and the witch scare, the satanic panic of that time. And it's just like all this creepy. I gotta admit, just right off the top here, I fucking love a good witch movie. So like this was completely biased for me, but I think it's just like one of those movies that, and we've said this, one of you guys said it earlier, but Eggers stuff kind of like sticks with you, and this movie has just stuck with me. Like the images from this movie, the Black Phillip, when he's and then like the witches dancing around the fire, man, in the woods, and this just like it just drops you into this like world again with like historically accurate dialogue, historically accurate clothing, and it's like him doing what he wanted to do with the Northmen in this witchy devilish world. And then the fact that what sent it all over the top for me is, and I don't know if he's done this in the other 2 movies, which is giving you like kind of a definitive answer into what's going on, when he says, she enters at the end and fucking Black Phillip is legit talks to her and says, "Would thou live deliciously?" Or
Yeah.
when he says, I was just like, "Fucking yes." And the like you said, the Black Sabbath comes on behind me and stuff. I just like I'm a total mark for this movie, man. So it was almost like not fair.
I think The Witch definitely does have and does successfully like, and The Lighthouse for that matter too. But I think The Witch a little bit, almost more so in a way, is just that build up is super satisfying. Or sometimes a film builds up to something and then it's just like, oh, like it's like limp dick
Yeah.
energy. Where like the build up in that, in The Witch is really just like, wait, she fucking like tripping balls, or is Black Phillip actually
Yeah.
like a dude that's pretty well dressed that's actually a witch? And like, and as we did on the witch episode when we talked about the flying ointments, seeing like the brutality of a woman smashing a baby into jelly to use for witchcraft is also like really unsettling. Um
I think you like that is the point that like which you said more eloquently than my like. Remember that it was cool. It was very cool. Uh, but like the fact that I didn't think he was gonna go there is like why it fucking blew me away. Like
Yeah.
like you said, I thought it was just gonna be like a fucking satanic priest or like just kind of. I didn't think it was actually gonna go there.
Right. There is definitely something to be said about The Witch being the first film and thus not knowing what to be expecting from it.
Yeah.
And also I do think that it basically lays the perfect um plotting down for a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
Lighthouse has some horror elements. I wouldn't really call it a full-on horror movie.
Way more psychological.
Yeah, Northman, again, they have some scenes where Egger's familiarity with the horror is helpful. I mean, there's like the scenes of Northman, in the chapter of the Night Blade feeds, which is
Oh
like
yeah.
the hardest shit in the
Oh
world.
yeah. Just when you
Where
hear a guitar just go like
Dun,
But-
dun.
exactly, but Amleth essentially becomes the villain of a horror movie in that act, right? Yeah, everyone's terrified. You get a lot of this very horrific kind of like there's like this inversion where this would be really really scary if you weren't on the side of the guy who's doing all the really bad stuff. Like you have like you have like the torn bodies in the shape of
was it supposed to be
sigils.
Sleipnir?
Yeah, it looked like it was Sleipnir.
Which is obviously another kind of weird thing, that another reference to Odin, because that's Odin's steed, like where he's even like kind of throwing out Scott, I can't wait to go see this when we're done with this again. I gotta like take notes. I'm gonna bring like a notebook with me.
I'm
But,
glad you
like,
brought. Oh, go ahead, bud. I'm sorry.
no, it's just I like Steve's point, like I just like he is such just a brute in this movie. And then when you're in that scene where like they literally think it's an evil spirit doing this, it's like not until like the queen's like, use your fucking head, dumbass. Fjolnir, it's clearly my fucking son. Like,
Yeah.
but for like a good portion of that whole segment, it's like they think there's a spirit. They're putting all the slaves on guard. All of a sudden, they're tripping fucking balls, and they legitimately think like this dark spirit's slaughtering them. Like, it's just so fucking like Eggers has to have done a ton of shrooms. Like, the man just loves to throw hallucinations in all his movies. Like,
I'm really glad that Steve brought that up because it kind of ties along with that Nicole Kidman like kind of twist, as I call it, because it's like, who is really the good guy? I mean, not that there needs to be like a good guy or a bad guy, but the king, and this is like another trope that Eggers is getting away from.
Right.
The king is not a bad guy. Like he just took over because Ethan Hawke was like an asshole. So it's like what your vengeance is leading to and telling you to do really isn't even like, it's just like, it's fucking like the new king isn't like some brutal barbaric kind of what was the dude's name in Game of Thrones, like where he's like cutting people's dicks off and putting them on poles, or like he's not Vlad the Impaler, or like, you know what I mean? He's just like running a farm and shit, you know?
Well, that's even the thing too, is like he became king because he killed his brother, who we learned is a scumbag, but even he's overthrown by King Harald, who's like an actual like legitimate Norse king. So like he's made to be a farmer. He's not even like heroic to that point. He's just like fuck.
That's one of the things that you know, is so interesting with this time period, right? So Haraldr Fairhair was in the sagas the first king of Norway, and when that happened, it pissed a lot of people off, because essentially he was, you know, it was all disparate tribes and clans and, you know, petty jarls and kings, and so a bunch of people wanted to leave, and a bunch of people didn't want anything to do with that. And so a lot of people ended up getting exiled or fleeing to Iceland to get away from him. And so, yeah, the land that was taken, it's not, you know, it's not even like one of those, I have to get my kingdom back, I'm the rightful ruler. It's like, no, they were actually like, Orvindil's land was in Ireland that he stole, and then Fjolnir stole it, and then Fjolnir got kicked out because it was land that Haraldr of Norway was then the rightful owner of in Ireland. And he was just a guy who had really cool hair and was stronger than a bunch of the other people around him. Like, so it's all this stuff where it's like, none of you deserve any of this. And so what are you doing? You're fucking killing random guys who are just like, I'm a peasant and this guy has a cool house. Like, and so like, that's the whole reason why they are, you know, this guy's soldiers. And he's like, I'm going to, and fucking Amleth is like, I'm going to fucking cut him in half and make him into a horse. Like, I'm going to do human centipede. Like, you know, so there's such like, it's so grim. Like,
and that's like the thing too of this movie that it stuck with me. It's like an actual depiction. Like it kind of takes the fun out of like liking Viking shit a little bit, because you see just how fucking awful it is. Like you listen to Amon Amarth and you're like, yeah, Blood Eagle, bro. It's fucking tear some dudes' backs open. And then like you're watching like a hut of kids get burned. You're like, I don't feel super good about this now. Phenomenal movie. My letterbox score is, of course, like every Eggers, a 5. Steve, I'm assuming yours is also.
Yes, it is a 5, and Green Knight is now a 2.5.
Yeah, I would go 5 as well, man. Eggers can do no wrong to me.
Fucking
or he can do wrong to me, I should say.
Okay, this was super fun, dude. We got to do this again for sure. We got to come on your thing, and you got to subject us to a movie that somehow neither of us will probably have seen, which might be tricky or might be very possible.
We might have to bend the rules a little bit. Maybe we'll come on and just like gush over something, or, you know, but yeah, I got to have both you guys on, man. And this has been a blast.
Yeah, I promise I will not talk as much on your show as I do on mine.
At least I'm just glad you're self-aware.
I'm just glad that someone knows his shit, because it's like the first viewing for a movie, even for me. That's why like I love having the theme queen with me, because she picks up on all like the you know, like what they're trying to say, and you know, all this other stuff, like the Raven thing, that you brought up, and I was just like, I was in the theater almost like a Conan the Barbarian myself, like, oh, Raven, free him, fucking metal. Take a sip of my Mountain Dew. But it's like, I just like watch a movie the first time, and I almost like just take it in as images and sounds, you know. I always have to see it a second.
That's the general gist of it. Yeah. It's, you know. Give us all your socials. Where can people that have listened to this find your stuff, whether it's you or your show, or I know you got your YouTube for some other stuff too, so plug all that right now for everybody.
Yeah, so you can find me at Horror-fying My Friends on Facebook and Insta, and on Twitter at Horror-fying MF. hit me line at Capped Creature on Twitter and Capped Creature on TikTok. Yes, I am. I just joined TikTok and my fucking life is over.
Feeling shamed, aren't you?
But yeah, we're available on all podcast platforms. Like I said, our show's a little bit different. It's like kind of for someone who's, we welcome horror vets as well, but it's very much like a let me cause trauma to you by introducing you to, you know, Tobe Hooper films and, you know, all kinds of stuff.
And if I remember correctly, don't you have a metal show you do as well? I think with your brother, if I remember.
Yeah,
correctly?
so that's a little bit on hiatus because he's expecting a child. Yeah, so
that's not an excuse.
yeah, we're kind of wondering what we're gonna do with that. Maybe make it a bonus show or something like that. But yeah,
Having a child, that's not very cult of him.
yeah, I know.
Steve, you're gonna just say what you usually say, but where do people find you?
Yeah, I'm at Rude Speaker and all the things, Twitter, whatnot. As of now, I'm still gonna keep a Twitter despite that diabolical bastard buying it. I don't really know if I care or not about that. Like I made a good tweet earlier, and I'm gonna restate it. I think the only good thing that we're gonna come out of this is that in due time we'll probably be able to call crypto bros the R slur without getting canceled on Twitter, and that'll make it all kind of worth it. But yeah, give me a root speaker on this, on all this stuff.
All right, and of course, if you want to find me, and some of you keep doing that, I don't know why. At the Ghoul Daddy on the Insta and on the Twitters. I interact with you guys. We have a good time. Twitter is pretty much, I don't even like do horror on there really that much anymore. I just yell about the White Sox sucking ass all of a sudden. So if you want to see me just really sad all the time, do that. Of course, if you live in the Chicagoland area, you should come visit me at Lunar Brewing Company, where I work most Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. We can talk about movies, or I can just get you really drunk on Malort. But obviously, if you're a fan of the show, or you're a fan of this episode, or you're seeing this for the first time, follow us at Groovy Little Pod on the Facebook, on the Twitter, on the Instagram, on the YouTube as well, where we'll have this up. If you're listening, you want to look at us gesticulate to each other. We're going to start putting more kind of things up. Definitely any interviews we do, visual components will go up there. We're going to dick around the YouTube. You know, people seem to like using it, so we'll just use everything possible except for TikTok at this point. And besides that, thanks for tuning in. And next month, the month of Maniacs, May for Maniacs. I don't know what we're going to do to start. We're probably going to do Creep. And then from there, we're just going to watch a bunch of white men kill a bunch of white women. It'll be great. So until then, stay groovy. Should I start throat singing?
And that Valkyrie wasn't wearing braces, by the way. And I saw a lot of people talk about that. They were engravings. It was a cool thing that they used to do. They used to be called blow teeth. And that's why that's actually where we got the phrase Bluetooth from. It was a Danish king, Haraldur Bluetooth, and the little thing, the little logo for Bluetooth was actually his bind rune. So yeah, so fuck you. They're not braces. Bye.